All right. I mean, I guess we could get started if we wanted. Strahd, is it?
Mm-hmm.
You were able to read the book this morning?
Yes, I was. The assigned preface and then the first chapter by the Karmapa, right?
Yep.
Yep, that's what I got through.
Nice.
Wonderful. Hmm.
It's funny, I actually when I was living in Gainesville, went to uh, a Tibetan Buddhist temple that was of the Karmapa lineage, but this was the first book or portion of a book that I read by him.
Nice.
Hmm. At least outside of them reading it during the service.
Yeah.
All right. The preface itself is a great indicator, I thought, of where they're coming from in writing this book and um, everything. So the preface, though, it's summarizes kind of that, as the cover would indicate. This is a book about anger.
Hmm.
That the real A short selection of the chapter on patience in the Mahayana classic, The Way of the Bodhisattva, highlights that real enemy is anger itself. Which I have to say, anytime somebody says blank emotion is blank itself, is always pretty funny to me. Um, so jumping just straight into this first essay, because when we were going through radical compassion, I felt like the preface and the conclusion both had like really good stuff in it, and this one, the preface kind of underwhelmed me.
Yeah.
It just said the same. But yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Sorry. Okay, now I'm less distracted. I just finished the thing that I was trying to get done. Okay. So just right off the bat, what I really liked about this essay was it was like all depend on one another. For this reason, whenever we act according to self-interest, sooner or later our selfish aims are bound to clash with the aims of people we rely upon to accomplish our own goals. Um, I don't know. This immediately is very factual to me. This chapter was very relatable for me. I don't know about you guys.
Hmm.
Yeah.
The conflicts fueled by anger one. That's what we're in.
Yeah, conflict resolution, anger is the problem. Yeah.
Um. Oh yeah, yeah,
Conflicts fueled by anger is the
yeah.
subsection. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yes. For
Um. Mhm.
for me, it was good to get a perspective of the difference between conflict just in general
Mhm.
and conflict that's specifically fueled by anger and the difference between the two. Because, I mean, you look around the world, my head jumped to on one of these sentences. I can't find it exactly, but like, sometimes competition and conflict isn't always bad. Like when you were saying, like, I don't know, economy, competition, or conflict promotes many good things, and some self interest can be useful.
Yep.
But if it comes from a place of destroy the other, or anger, or anything, it creates conflict that is unhealthy, dangerous, if not to others, then to the very least yourself.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
so I like that differentiation there. It gave me a way to think through the differences, my different opinions on those two different things.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, yep.
Yes. Um. And just like most things, I think in the Buddhist practices, this
Mhm.
chapter very much was like, you have to deal with what's inside you, not with what's inside
Mhm.
them.
Yeah.
And so I thought this was a very practical part about what was going on. Gives a little anecdote.
Just
I
skimming
enjoyed,
over it
I
again, right?
enjoyed the
I'm
anecdote.
skimming. I read it fully, and then it's like when I'm done reading, it just washes out of my mind.
Yeah. Or you forget which part in your head is from which portion of the chapter.
Or if it's
That's
from this book at all, or if I'm thinking of a different book, like that happens too. I'm like, oh no, wait, that was the other book we read. Um,
Mm.
I mean,
So,
he very much address the author. I don't know if they're he or she. They very much address the human tendency with anger of wanting the other person to get what they deserve. Our mood can be dark. It can cloud our judgment. But ultimately, this is just a loss for ourselves. When ultimately the people we're angry at will probably not be phased by it in the least.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then under this next paragraph, I love what he says. He's like, we are willingly ingesting poison. And
Talk about
so,
the next slowly poisoning ourselves one.
mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Is this the one where it talks about anger as a mental illness as well?
Yeah, it happens in this chapter. A few
Mm.
more paragraphs, I think, from here. It'll jump
Yeah.
in.
There's something I wanted to say on that portion as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Obviously, physical well-being is tied to mental well-being, but a lot of things that people don't. At least when I look how I've perceived physical well-being and mental well-being in the past,
Yeah.
including anger, people often think like, okay, what's happening to me physically or in the world around me is causing this anger, but the anger can also cause physical issues as well. It's not just a mental illness, but the mental illness is tied in with the other parts of your body and how you're feeling and
Mm-hmm.
in general, including indulging in righteous anger consistently can actually
Mm.
cause beyond just mental health issues, literal physical stress health issues. And I found that to be a very interesting, concrete way of noticing the true damage that anger is doing to you. It's not just harming your relationship, it's not just harming the way you think, it can literally harm your actual health.
Yeah.
So that's just a
Well,
thought I
Yeah.
was.
and
All
I
that.
think the word you used, indulge, is a really important one here. That when we let when these powerful emotions do take us, it is in many ways an indulgence. Um, and I think I would agree with that.
Even when it's illogical to be angry in the modern world, because the
Yeah.
modern world is very different from what we've evolved for, like tribal society.
Right. There's a ton of
Even
reasons to be angry.
yeah, yeah. If you look at it from that perspective, but beyond that, even when you get angry, especially anger can often feel bad and yet good at the same time. Especially if you feel like you are rightfully angry, it can
Mm-hmm.
feel very good to be angry, and you almost don't want to feel not angry because then you feel like you're not doing what you're supposed to make them get what they deserve or to set wrong to right or something, but it's not really often the best way to go about it for you or for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we get this sense of like vindication sometimes from like feeding
Mhm.
our own anger.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it can be like perversely satisfying,
Yeah.
even as the anger kind of like wears down on us and has all of these other effects on our bodies, minds, relationships.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I agree with that.
For me, that area was certainly. I'm not a very angry person in general, but when it comes to outrage and anger, my area is the area of like politics and what I read in the news, trying to keep that anger and
Mm.
outrage from not existing, but maybe reacting in a more positive way to what I read might be nice.
Yeah, I struggle with that a lot as well.
That's why I don't look at the news at all. I'm blissfully unaware of all sorts of stuff right now.
I'm really having to like work to strike a balance between like staying informed enough and like not just
Not
melting.
drowning in it.
seething anger and despair. So.
Yeah. Definitely get too informed for sure.
Yeah.
So then, what I like about what the author was talking about with this story of this man who lost his job for blowing up and whatever, he had nothing left to anchor him, and so he was thrown completely off balance. And I think that was a very vivid image in my mind when I read that, of this idea of how off balance we can feel when the things we're relying on to define us are removed.
Yeah.
Thought about it in terms of not just not just like our jobs, but anything we define ourselves by, you know? And so, like, he lost his definition. He didn't have his job, and so he was off balance. And I was interested in that thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know for myself, I've definitely had basically this day before where, like, one thing goes wrong in the morning and it just spins out of control very quickly. And I get more frustrated and more, like, off center. So.
Right.
It makes me think, at least in that way, this particular description and sometimes the way anger or even other emotions work, I've seen in myself, is that it's not linear growth. Like, one thing that angers you, and then the same type and same level of thing happens 10 minutes later. It's not just linear. Each thing, if you don't notice it and recognize it and let it pass, if you stew about it, it exponentially grows until the explosion just comes. That can definitely be a tendency.
Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure. Yes. And then he reemphasizes, like you said, again and again, we need to check ourselves for signs of the presence of these afflictions, and for the, like, just check in with these disturbances. Don't just let them pass and then boil inside of us. We have to, like, check in with the moment that we're being disturbed. You know, can't just let it be something that's gonna pile on to another thing.
Yeah.
And so, being mindful enough in the moment to say, all right, that was upsetting, and but it, just being able to let it flow off of you, so that when the next moment comes, you're not with that past moment anymore. You've moved on and are ready for this new moment, fresh on its own.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, like, even when we're not in that moment of, like, conflict and anger or whatever the distress may be, like, it's still a pretty beneficial practice to, like, kind of cope ahead and, like, just do an internal, like, checklist for ourselves to make sure there's nothing lingering that, like, you know, we thought we resolved previously, but have actually been clinging to.
That did not happen.
Condition us for, like, defensiveness or conflict, like, going forward. So
I like that phrasing you used, cope ahead. Yeah. I think in many ways that's a lot of Buddhism, isn't it? It's a preemptive disarming in us for the world, so that we have less rising up to it.
True enough.
Yeah, I think it's one of my perhaps favorite terms from, like, the DBT classes that I participated in briefly. But.
Nice.
Is my computer causing echo at all? I'm just trying to make sure it's not.
Not that I've noticed.
Okay.
Oh,
just
right there.
Sure.
Only when I talk super loud.
Okay, I'll turn it down just slightly on my end because I don't have my headphones right now.
But not excessively, no.
Okay.
I've definitely heard worse.
There's also definitely my squeaky chair that I'm sure sometimes comes through.
I have to say, I really, really liked this next part, this next session of becoming cause-oriented.
Yeah.
And especially, and I highlight it so Sam can probably see that, but we want happiness, but we do not pay attention to the causes of happiness. And I was like, oh, that's so applicable to everything, though, isn't it? We don't always pay attention to the causes of pain or the things that cause happiness, so we're not knowledgeable about what will actually bring us that happiness, because we're not mindful in the moments that we are receiving that happiness.
Yeah.
And it also depends on how you define happiness. Is happiness the little reward boost you get for doing something, that dopamine boost, or is it like contentment? It depends on what definition you're using. to find the roots of that. I think it's often we're focusing on the causes of the former and not the causes of the latter, because the latter is a little bit more.
Yeah.
You got to slowly build it up. The former is much easier to be like, ooh, shiny. That gives me happy
Ooh,
chemicals.
shiny.
Right. Hello, Avery.
Avery.
I assume Avery cannot talk at the
It's
moment.
okay.
Well, we're on becoming cause-oriented.
Um,
Yeah, let me just skim this portion again.
Skimming. So, blah blah blah. Cause oriented.
I think one thing that could really help here, and I don't do it consistently. I do it maybe like once a week, but oftentimes moments pass and then you don't really reflect on them because you don't give yourself either boredom time just to let yourself actually think, not just meditating where you're trying not to think or just letting thoughts pass. But journaling is a productive thinking for me. And if I journal maybe just once a week, bullet points of what was good this week, what wasn't, and maybe I could turn that journaling into what this week was I happy with, what actually brought me happiness, and what didn't. That actual reflection time could maybe much more cement the causes in my mind for me to know about them. Because oftentimes you're just experiencing it as you go, and you don't actually reflect, and then you don't remember what causes pain or happiness.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. And then, oh, I had a thought and now it's gone. It fell out of my head.
back.
It fell out. Um, yeah, okay, I remember. Okay, so one of the things you said, which is an interesting discussion I've had a lot with people, but to put it in different words, what I think you said, we're in a world full of constant stimulation. And
Mhm.
so being able to step out of those moments and be with yourself and be bored with your thoughts and to not be consuming constantly, whether it's music, reading, media, you know what I mean, any kind of media.
Mhm.
Um, I think letting go of the addiction of that stimulation to be with your mind is a really important part of really taming your sense of mindfulness, I guess.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
I know I've seen people really struggle to have even a few minutes where they're not being entertained, you know?
Yeah.
I'm often guilty of the being like a dog who just sees a squirrel and then sees another squirrel and then sees a bird. I mean, my mind jumps all over the place. So it's certainly a method to build up the ability to really focus, which is why I like journaling. There's like in meditation, it's often thinking the wandering mind causes suffering, and through daily life, it honestly does. But
Mhm.
there's also times where you can use the benefits that the wandering mind can do, as long
Mhm.
as you are mindfully allowing it to wander. You
Right.
sit down with intention to let it wander along
Yeah.
a certain path.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really like that. Um,
I like that too. Um let's go to the next
I
page.
like
Boom.
this. Oh,
Huh. Oh, okay.
no.
No. If you're going to talk about
Just
it, what?
I liked this. Thinking of others and caring about their well-being is a far wiser and more effective way to bring about our own well-being than caring exclusively about our own individual needs. I think it just like
Yeah.
nice.
Mhm.
Yes. Lice are a good analogy
Pinpointed.
in reality, but
Yeah.
also analogy.
And yeah, tied to that, although not exactly the same thing, I've heard that one of the key things for general happiness in life, beyond like the basics, getting up, sleep, whatever, is gratitude. Gratitude for people around you and what they do, and being a part of their community. So it's sort of tied to it in that way. And then helping them and having purpose and working for others, I can definitely see as being the other side of that coin. I like that part a lot too.
Yeah. Um. So at first, this last sentence in that section was really funny to me, and I realized people do it. I've done it. But you may enter into a conflict thinking it will yield some measure of happiness, but you're just planting innumerable seeds of pain and trouble. Um, and you know what? I feel like I've done that. I've totally been in that moment of like you feeling feisty. You're not gonna have a super smooth interaction, and yeah, you enter into a conflict, whatever that looks like.
Mm,
Yeah.
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 I don't. I'm just thinking because I'm often the type of person who, when it comes to really personal stuff, especially like when somebody's like criticizing me, my tendency is, if I get angry, which isn't often, I can often get snippy though. I tend to take it personally. Like if you're telling me, oh, I should be doing X in Y way, or maybe you shouldn't do that, if they're not going about it in the most kind words or whatever, I'll take it personally as an attack on my character. So that's something I have to work through. Of don't jump straight into the conflict because you're only going to make it worse. Even you don't know their intention. You are assuming many a thing when they're speaking. So
I think this book already in my mind just makes me go back to like the 5 precepts a lot.
Mhm.
And I think, especially in my mind, uh, I think a lot about, oh gosh, I have no idea what order they're in, but like right speech and right thinking or right thought,
Yeah.
whatever
I have just
words.
happened to have written down if you want me to list the 5 precepts, if that's what you're asking.
No,
Okay, okay.
I know 2 of them. That's all I need to know right now. And I know right thought is technically more about all of the dharma and stuff, but I feel like the dharma is very close related to these sort of things of like right action.
Yeah.
Um and so I feel like sometimes when you look at the 5 precepts, it's like, okay, so maybe you don't have right thought right now. We'll try to have right action regardless of that. Like, all
Yeah.
right, my brain wants to scream at you, but I'm gonna not.
Thank you for not screaming.
Yeah. There's no specific order. You just grab onto as many of the portions of the eightfold path as you can.
Yeah, just like, all right, I got 2 of them right now. Good enough.
Better than zero, man. Better than zero.
Yeah. Feed into one another. So.
um, so then this speaking to those who don't listen was really a reflective section for me when I think about people who I significantly disagree with.
Yeah.
It did a really good job of kind of too bad. Too bad. You gotta do it anyway. When we do encounter when we do encounter people we find to be arrogant or hard-headed, there's a tendency to want to break through their resistance by being forceful with them. Yes.
This is
I'm like that with
definitely
my
a red
husband. I
line
want to
with
smash his head in.
the views of my family at large because my family is so hard-headed and like stuck in some of their views that oof. And I instantly just want to come in with like, no, here's why you're wrong. I'm not fielding any questions. Like, stop it.
You're
But
wrong.
that has never worked. So
I've always been the. Funnily enough, I enjoy discussions. I'm less of a debater. I'm more of like a mediator type person. And the things I've learned is, God, sometimes the best thing to do is not to have a conversation if you really think it's not going to go well. But that's harder said than done when they're really saying some crazy stuff.
yeah, it's
But
really difficult to identify like where that kind of
Yeah.
differences.
But
Like, what's better to, more wise to just kind of say nothing than it is to engage with like a
Mm-hmm.
blatantly weird view.
it's always a subjective, blurry line, that's for sure. A line that you have to draw for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I've noticed when I am having conversations and I do jump into it, I always try to like set the stage or tone right. Like I find if I come in with a questioning attitude to try to like, oh, what's your thoughts and why do you think that? And then go about it in like a questioning way rather than a statement, fact, 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 here's why you're wrong, bozo type thing. They tend to reciprocate that at least sometimes. Sometimes they're just too hard-headed to even, they just jump into a diatribe. But sometimes they reciprocate your tone. I've seen that with people. You give a little bit, they'll give a little bit, and then it creates a positive cycle in the conversation, but not always.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to find ways to interact productively with people who aren't able or unwilling to broaden their thinking in order to take in the others' perspectives. It is up to us to find a healthy way to relate to their vantage point.
Indeed.
How dare they make me think? What? I have to actually try to get along with people?
Effort, man.
What?
Can't I just yell at them?
Can I just yell at them? That would be
Agree with
swell.
me already.
Letting go of righteousness. That righteous fury we were talking about earlier.
Oh yeah.
We're always so confident in promoting our own aims, as if what is best for us must automatically be best for the whole world. There you go. Welcome to story time with Des.
I'm here for it.
We get so completely caught up in our intense concern to pursue our own aims that nothing else really seems to make sense to us. This feels very relevant right now in our world.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about specific issues because I don't want my point to get muddled. But we get I think people, especially those with compassionate hearts, they get hyper fixated on how wrong certain actions are in the world that they forget how to talk to those people, the people who are in the other category. Without realizing at times how self-centered they can become in that way, I guess, is what I was thinking about. Because I know I've done this. I get blinded by my sense of righteous fury to a degree that I forget how to talk to the person at the opposing opinion, I guess. So.
Yeah.
So one of the things I thought about here, like, is kind of like there's not really usually like a one size fits all solution, because like every group is going to have different privileges and different disadvantages. And one thing that kind of came to mind for me is like the competing needs of like different, like the competing accessibility needs for like people with different disabilities and such things. And yeah, we can get so kind of focused on like, well, this is my experience, these are my goals, I need this thing, that we like kind of struggle to conceptualize and really also include like other groups and perspectives and needs, which competing and in conflict just kind of innately. Like, again, there's like conflict, and then there's like conflict fueled by anger, and like I think a lot of anger gets kind of tied into conflicts that don't necessarily require anger. And the anger may in fact just get in the way of those things being resolved. I don't know why this struck me so much here, but it did. So
Is there a chat where I could, for after this discussion, link a short video that I saw about how anger more easily spreads?
I would literally
online
just
than
pop it
other emotions?
in the Sangha book club chat. I mean, since it's related to what we're talking about,
It is.
Yeah, I mean, just put it in there, man. As
Okay.
a furthered part of our discussion.
Yeah, but beyond this video, a thought that I had, and this is just me as a person, and that's an ad. I gotta shut
Ding,
that
ding,
off.
ding, ding, ding.
No, thank you, Trump. I don't want your ad. Okay.
Ding, ding, ding.
Is that I tend to be a lot less fixated and easily angered when it comes to specific views that I have about like ideas or stuff like that. I'm very malleable with ideas and open to hearing other things. But if somebody directly challenges a really closely held value that I have,
Mhm.
a value is much more easily going to put me on the anger path. If they are completely counteracting or acting or speaking in a way that just goes against one of those values, it's like a trigger
Yeah.
for me to get pissed off in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then he says you gotta bring even greater understanding to that conversation. That when somebody comes to you like that, you have to push even harder with affection and a spirit of compassion for those people.
Yeah. Takes practice, that's for sure.
When faced with people who are inflexible in their views, that is the time for you to be at your most flexible and accommodating.
Oh man, the rain here has gotten very loud.
See? That's poetically the universe saying, yes! That's the sky just screaming in affirmation. That's all you need to know.
Scream at me.
Rain is the sky's way of punching you in the face.
I thought that was lightning.
No. That's... I think lightning actually comes from the ground, if I remember science correctly.
Who the hell knows?
Yeah, it kind of originates in the ground and then meets itself, sort of. I don't remember the exact mechanism, but it's
complicated.
They still don't fully understand why lightning happens, which is hilarious.
I know it gets super hot. And it shocks me that anyone's capable of surviving it given the temperatures a lightning strike can reach. Anyway, moving on.
The dangers of living in Florida. I'm glad I haven't been hit by one yet.
I'm allergic.
When I observe some of our behavior, it really looks to me as if we human beings actually want to suffer. Yep. It does feel that way, doesn't it?
From time to
time. We seem to want to keep the painful experience of anger alive and close. Keep kindness and happiness at bay. We treasure suffering. Yeah, it just feels like it. Definitely have days like that. But we do not have to be that person. There is no single identity that can define us completely. Let yourself be that other person. A person who treasures true happiness, kindness, and tranquility. I like his verbiage of let yourself. It's not you have to be. It's like we have to give ourselves permission to be a different kind of person at times. And I vibe with that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, it can really feel like, especially with extreme emotions of any kind, that you become a different person when they are affecting you.
Mm-hmm.
I really get that idea of what he's talking about of letting yourself be a different person, letting yourself let those emotions go, of course. But even if you're not, it can really feel like somebody else took over your mind, especially for super strong emotions like jealousy or something.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever see somebody in a jealous rage, it's like somebody took over their body. What the hell's happening right now? It's kind of crazy how different of a person emotions can make you if you let them take control.
Yeah.
Yes. Receiving uninvited advice. Nobody here has problems with that, right? Nobody's ever gotten unsolicited advice before?
Oh, no. I just happen to have two mothers. I'm certain it's never happened to me. Grow up with two lesbian moms.
Nice.
Have that fun.
Double mom. Go ask your mother. Go ask your mother. Go ask your mother. Anyway, I saw a thing like that on Tumblr once, and it just made me laugh. Like, having two moms would suck. You get in an infinite loop of go ask your mom.
Truth. We would just scream out mom and see which one responds first.
When the gaps in thinking and age are great, even small comments can end up causing disputes and disharmony.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm.
Sometimes it's just even communication differences alone that
Yeah.
can lead to it. Like,
Yeah, there's a legitimately different values between age, but also just different vocabulary too.
yeah, like
The way things are said.
like saying, you know, you're welcome in regards to like a thing. To say like no problem. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and anymore with communication being so often like in a text format instead of a
Mhm.
verbal format, there are some ways that generationally people tend to communicate that's just simply different. Like a younger person uses like the ... or the ellipses
Mhm.
to mean a different social cue than an older person who uses it. Who doesn't mean it with that same sort of emphasis, but instead it's like a weird pause in their, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
we tend to younger people tend to type as they talk, I think.
Yes.
And then older people tend to type just differently. They're either typing like they're writing a formal letter or just nonsense.
One example, I know my mom really loved to send okay with a period.
Yeah.
Okay. But that is never ever how I instinctually perceive it. I always get like alarm bells going off in my head, like
It
what
looks
happened?
aggressive
What
to
did
a
I
younger
do?
person because like that's not how we talk. And so it's like, okay,
Mhm.
why are you mad? That period means you're angry. I don't like it.
That's why I always put like, I don't use a lot of emojis, but I swear like every third text just has a smiley face at the end for me. I'm like, you haven't pissed me off. I'm just making sure I get that across.
It's that
I'm not
pause to
angry.
be like, I will politely smile at you with this big smile to ensure that this is still an upbeat
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. Um.
Yeah.
So this dude
I
left
have
for the monastery when he was 7.
yeah.
Yeah, that
Car-
struck me. It was just like, whoa.
It's real young.
And he also had to like when he was older, like escape Tibet through the mountains and getting shot at and stuff. It was some crazy Karmapa stories, man.
And then but I liked where he started to talk about how he was handling people who were imposing discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had anyway, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. In my head, I realize that's a different section.
Well,
Rather
one thing
than
I
mandatory what?
go. I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
you go. It's probably better than what I had to say.
All I wanted to say is my issue is this may just be a guy thing. I don't know. Is that when I'm talking with people who are like complaining about something, I literally have to force myself just to empathize sometimes and not give advice because I want to help. I want to help, but also giving advice sometimes just makes it worse for them. And I
I
have to literally
mean,
like, force myself not.
culturally, tends to be associated as a male thing, but I think it's really in anyone who has I want to say a overly practical mindset. Like, all right, you've presented me with a problem. Let's figure out 3 solutions, and you can pick
Yep.
one.
Yep.
Like that's yeah, that's been stereotypically given to males, but I see it in all genders, and
It's kind of driven by our like
Uh,
focused.
yeah, we're like we're troubleshooters. People who are
mhm.
troubleshooters or
You
who
are out.
yeah.
Yeah, my friend came to me with like, I'm feeling depressed, and I'm like, all right, get more sleep, have some vitamin D. Oh wait, I should just listen to you. That's what I should
You
be
should go
doing
on a
right now.
walk. Oh, have you tried this? Maybe a log bath will help. After you do all those things, come back to me.
Use your prescription, sir.
Yeah, and I think that gets me into some trouble sometimes when people make some vague statements in larger Discord servers I'm in. I'm like, all right, if you're posing this sort of question here, I feel like you want advice and not just to scream at the void. Although,
Yeah, it's hard
if
to
you just
tell
wanted to scream
sometimes.
at the void, you maybe should have gone to like Twitter or something.
Nobody should go for Twitter. That's mistake number 1 for anger.
Oh, for anger, yes. Practically speaking, as a business lady, though, Twitter is really good for networking. Anyway,
Trips.
our aim should be to instill in them good ways of thinking and feeling for themselves. Here he's talking like about children, but in many ways I think it's really applicable to anyone who's in a position that you have influence over.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than mandating behavior or imposing a discipline based on external authority, it's better to help them see the results of acting in a certain way, which totally true. I worked at a daycare and observing small human beings at their simplest mentality. Absolutely true. It's way more effective and long lasting for them to figure out like that it is in fact a better idea to do XYZ
Yeah.
than to just say don't do that.
Like, even as a kid, if I were told, hey, don't, like, you can't do this, I would be like, well, why? What, like, I'd want to know the reasoning behind it. And if I wasn't given that, I would just keep, like, pushing at that behavior and, like, pushing that boundary over and over until it was
Right.
either explained or given up upon entirely. So, yeah.
If we want to tie this back to a previous chapter of, I forget which specific one it was, but like people who are hard-headed and stuff,
Yeah.
take this with a grain of salt. It's just one of the ways that you can go about it, and it works for me and my personality type. Is I was saying before, like asking questions. So not only teaching people the cause and effect and how you shouldn't just tell them to do something. Same way you shouldn't just tell them a fact and think that they'll believe it. You've got to like guide them through questioning their own beliefs. Because if they come to a conclusion themselves, they're much more likely to hold on to it than if you just push a conclusion upon them.
Yeah.
So I tend to incorporate to some degree or another like the Socratic method questioning stuff. I mean, to be fair, that got Socrates killed, but you know.
Well, and just as he says, and I can't remember, it's in one of these next sections. That's also a skillful thing you have to be aware of. Like you can't just be, well, why, like
Exactly.
there's like some skill that has to go into it. Otherwise, the Socratic method is nonsense.
Yeah, you know when to use it, and it's not always good to use it.
Right. My husband fancies himself a Socratic method user, and I'm like, you're not using the Socratic method, you're just trying to annoy me. You can't just call it the Socratic method and then think it's okay. That's like me handing you a bag of dry rice and calling it dinner.
So you better be careful. He'll end up like Socrates, drink that poison because he just pissed off everybody by asking why too many times.
No, Sam, don't leave us.
I will stop. I've stopped watching the stream, and that seems to have helped me be able to like hear people. So I think I'll still be here, but I might need a little bit of assistance following along.
No worries. We're still under the subheading intervening in others' disputes.
Okay.
The stream seems to be, maybe it's just my end, very blurry words right now. So I'm going to cut over to my own PDF. It's just everything's blurry on the screen.
Interesting.
Pixelated.
Hold on, I'm intrigued by this.
Oh, it got better. It was probably just a bandwidth thing at my own place.
Oh, you probably can't see words at all now.
Well, I can see your background, which is pretty, by the way.
Thank you. I like it. All right. Change windows. Here we go.
Okay.
Is that one easier to read?
That's perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. Poop.
All right.
Yeah. I'm just I'm also recording this, and
Mm-hmm.
so briefly in the recording, they also just saw my background and not
Oh.
not the book. So I had to fix that. Okay, fixed. All right, so back to intervening in others' disputes. Um, we need to implement aspirations with wisdom and discernment. There we go. That's where it is. It also takes considerable skill. Well, we begin with noble aspirations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People first have to want to hear what we have to say, and a basic willingness to change. We don't want that, despite our best intentions telling them what we see may just upset them. It's
Mm-hmm.
true.
Yep.
I think that's a pick your battles kind of thing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
pick your battles sort of thing.
And just because you have the right intention doesn't mean your actions are right or that the results will be good.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, especially in such delicate matters.
Mm-hmm.
Righteousness can creep in. We may start to feel that our good intentions entitle us to dispense advice or to intervene, whether the circumstances warrant it or not.
I love the voices.
I feel like you're some like I don't know, great king giving like a oration, giving a speech.
I am, thank
A
you.
victory speech.
All hail King Des.
King Des! I'm King Des, the greatest of all Deses.
Yes.
And then if we move into global conflicts and global solutions, I was a little anxious going into this because I didn't know how the chapter would start to handle it because it sounds political. It sounded so like, all right, we're going to talk politics. I was hoping to avoid politics for the rest of my life, but here we are again. But I thought the way the author ultimately handled it was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that with great power comes a great deal of responsibility. And that includes the responsibility not to exercise one's power over others in pursuit of the private interests of one's own nation. So this is weird. Ugh. So took me like a few minutes to parse this apart. Well, it was like, your country can't just force everybody else to do its thing.
Mm-hmm.
Was effectively what I got from that. What about you guys?
Yeah.
It's weird because a lot of history is countries, I mean, flipping colonialism. I mean, it's pretty easy just to see complete exploitation for a country's interests.
Well, history is written
Yeah.
by the victors, as they say.
Mhm. And at a certain point, this is good advice, but it's also really hard to build institutions that will actually exercise them because countries are elected by the people in those countries, and the people in those countries want those countries to do what's good for them. So it's hard to implement, even if it's great advice. I want to think about this further and try to figure out what way of organizing things or what can be changed or what happens to actually make this a realistic goal. Because obviously each country should espouse their values and try to improve the world. You can't just have a country be completely isolationist, but you don't want exploitation for exploitation's sake. It's a hard balance, and it's hard to know what's genuine and what is just pure self-interest and intervention. You know?
Yeah. Warm, fuzzy feelings about the U.S. Blah, blah, blah. Blah. Blah, blah. To be a responsible, conscious citizen, it is important that you think for yourself and take universal peace, stability, and well-being into account. Use your discernment and take a stand that serves the whole world, not just one corner of it. I thought that was a good quote.
Yeah. And not just thinking for yourself, because that's harder to do than it sounds, to be honest. it's very easy to be influenced by the media you consume. It's being very careful and selective with what you consume, because what you listen to becomes what you draw upon when you're thinking thoughts, and those thoughts then become your beliefs. So what you put into your brain can become what you think about, and what you think about can become what you believe, and what you believe can become what you do. So be careful what you consume, is what my thought goes to here.
Be careful, little children, what you see. Be careful, little children, what you see. God up above. Anyway.
It's like giggle mood voice chat today, ain't it?
Yes. I never giggle otherwise. This is such a weird thing. I mean, I would never giggle ever. So then here, the author like called me out where I'm like, if you find yourself angry at any government, please recollect how harmful anger is to yourself and others. And steady yourself with a firm resolve. And I was like, oh, don't ask me to check myself like that. Just let me be mad at the government.
Yeah.
It'll make me.
Although at the same time, I don't know that my anger has ever really caused me to like move to action. Whereas like once I've moved past the anger, that's when I feel like I can like, do more to get involved with the government situation.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then facing any challenge. If you can do something to change the circumstances, why be upset about it? And if you cannot do anything to change the circumstances, why be upset about it?
Yes.
I get that one. It's why be up. The second part is what is not wrong necessarily, but just difficult for me, because even if you can't do something about it, you should let go and you should recognize that and just work within what you're capable of. But also, you see the real harm that's happening, and you don't want to let go of the empathy for the people who are suffering either. So it's
Right.
you
I think
gotta
there's
have some way of thinking about it that isn't just whatever, because I can't.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important when we face something, whether we can change it or not, to kind of feel what we feel about it, but just not linger on that and not like insist like I must stay upset about this, because I feel like if we don't let those feelings through and don't let them surface, then we do lose a lot of that empathy that we can build upon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's the difference between. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no.
It's the difference between being righteously angry at the person who's doing the hurting and empathizing with the person who's getting hurt. There's different sides of the coins that you can emphasize.
And I think often these feelings aren't necessarily like exclusionary. We don't just get one or the other. They tend to arise kind of simultaneously, and just like letting that happen and then letting it go and focusing on, really who's being harmed by the situation and how can I, help them or better empathize with them or understand the circumstances. I think that's very important. So.
In situations where change is possible, you work for change. Where it is not possible, you accept that fact and work within the bounds of what is possible.
Indeed.
Practical advice. Starting with ourselves.
Woo.
Each person is said to be his or her own protector or savior.
Yeah. You can't completely and only rely on yourself, but you do have. You're not even completely in control of yourself, but of all things in the world, yourself is the thing you have most control over. So I like that thought a lot.
Yeah.
If you can develop your qualities and remain true to your pure aspirations, at the very least, you will always be able to take heart in knowing that there is one less harmful person in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a good sentiment. I think it's one I've held to for a long time. Of like, yep, the world's full of terrible people, and I can make sure there's one less.
I like that too.
Trust. Trust was an interesting, felt very subjective to the author's opinions section.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how to feel about this section. Really, like what to make of it. Yeah.
It's one I think I'm gonna have to reflect on more. On what I don't know if I'll come to the conclusion of like, yep, this was totally right, or no. But I don't know that I have an immediate like sense of if I agree or not. The author seems very free with their trust.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
I do agree
maybe
about
maybe coming from that kind of like unshakable sense of ourselves, which was discussed previously, but I know like for me it didn't quite sit right to like this concept that like our feelings of, you know, kindness and compassion towards others should be where our trust lies rather than in how they behave towards us, because like just I feel like I've gotten trapped in some very vicious cycles and situations through that kind of like mindset.
Mhm.
And so I've definitely become wary of it over time. Yeah, so it was interesting to read, but at the same time I felt my like defenses come up like, no, I don't know that I can accept this like this version of trust, like this imagining of it. Which could be a very big indicator like I should reflect here more, and kind of truly inspect like what trust is to me now and where it can be more open. But I noticed a lot of resistance like while I was reading this part. So
I'm wondering if it's coming down to more like semantics of maybe I have just defined the word so differently that
it could be.
that's
Yeah, I
so.
still think there's something to be said for noticing if there's toxicity going on and if somebody's acting poorly to you. You're not supposed to just ignore that and say, just because I wish the best for you, I trust you. But I
Right.
do like the idea of that even if somebody's harming you, at least in the way he's defining trust here, you can still hope for the best for them. Even somebody who's
Right.
awful, you dislike, you still, in a way, the best thing in the world, for you and for them, isn't for them to suffer. It's for them to stop suffering, to stop hating in the way that they do, and to be and feel better. For if they feel happiness and improve in that way, then that's also one less harmful person in the world. And you can
Right.
still hope for that, even if they
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think the author kind of reflected on that somewhat. I'm not sure where the line the
Our
line
trust
in
can be
text
like the
was.
best aspiration we have for the other person.
Yeah.
And then skipping a bit
Uh,
to sincerely caring for the happiness of those on whom we depend for our own happiness might be one of the most powerful tools we can bring to our work to resolve conflicts.
Yeah, so it almost feels like trust is kind of being used in this context as a kind of stand-in for the concept of like a kind of universal compassion or goodwill,
Yeah.
which is very different from like how I think probably a lot of us like in our heads define trust or how we've been taught to think of trust. So
Yeah. So that's what I was thinking is that maybe I'm using a different
a different word essentially.
word than trust. Yeah.
I can much more easily give my compassion and give it permanently, no matter the person's actions, than I can give trust as it's typically defined. If a person consistently wrongs me, I will not trust them and will likely believe that if they've done it 5 times before, they might do it 5 times again. And I may even cut off contact with them. But I think even here he's talked somewhere about cutting off contact and saying even then you can still hope for the best for them.
Right.
So
You can aspire for their happiness and their resolve.
yeah.
resolution in what's making them suffer and cause pain.
I don't think I like this definition of trust, but I like the intention behind what he's going for. I
Yeah.
would just simply
Yes,
look at it
yes.
from more of a lens of compassion rather than the word trust.
Yeah, for sure.